So I prepared a screening presentation for you. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Cool, perfect. So hi, everyone. My name is Alex Boya. I'm the creator of The Walking Bread. So The Walking Bread is an animation series. It's a comedy, surrealist type of comedy. And it basically sort of trickled down into different things. Now it's being developed as an animation film. It also has a animation channel online, as well as a video game and live performances and interactive media. So it's sort of an idea to build a sort of a world, right? So the idea is to make a sort of world and to develop comedy in relation to food. So I'm going to go ahead and just play some excerpts. So that's the concept, right? So it's sort of a comedy, and the project itself worked as sort of a snowball. So in the sense that as we were developing the project, the medium itself was subject to change. So this sort of offered the opportunity of building a story where the actual process of making it is the variable. So usually in animation, you have a very clear medium, and in our case, the medium itself was subject to change, which I found very exciting. So I also made other films that can maybe give you a bit of situate the process. Let me know if the sound is low. So that was made in 2018. And before that, to give you another idea of the type of animation we're talking about, there's a film that came that I made a bit earlier in 2015 about similar topics, a bit more on the side of the user. So in this case here, you're talking about there's a sort of a study of almost all the craze with regards to transhumanist themes around that time, and the idea of transcending through appendages to the body. And the one right before that was sort of more in the line of how it feels to be flooded by information. So I'll let you listen to the other one. It's another minute long, and then we can jump right ahead into the talking more about the walking bread and the current project that's being made.
Found sound.
Found sound.
Found sound.
Found sound.
Found sound.
Hey guys, what's up? I just wanted to share with you some home products that I've purchased. If you guys would like to see the items that I'm purchasing for my apartment, definitely leave a comment or, So I'm just going to get right into it. Now, this item is a basket that I leave on top of my toilet. And normally what I do is I place these napkins in there, which can be considered hand towels. Now, these are $1.99. Now, this next item I did get for only $2.99. Just because Now, the next item I got was a picture for $12.99, and it says, "All my love, all my life." And I have other pictures with this same border, and I love it. Right in my style for my apartment.
So yeah, you can see how, in a way, those are basically, if you go back to this is sort of a mixture between these two worlds. I'm going back to this just to give you an idea of the progression. Here I'm trying to bring back some of the comedy and some of the technology themes that you may have noticed in Turbine, but really focusing on food and focusing on sort of the satire around industrial farming and the idea of solutions that maybe end up being creating new issues that we didn't foresee. So really, my goal is usually to try to make it entertaining and simple, and kind of identify something that we all recognize. So in this case, it was the zombie motif that was very, very popular in the last 15 years. But we're trying to, in this film, in this series, we're trying to flip it, right? So it's a reverse zombie apocalypse because it's the hungry living because of global warming. There's not enough food, so the living are just trying to feed themselves like normal human beings, and this fictional company, this fictional agrochemical company, comes up with a solution with this synthetic bread, a bit like in movies like Soylent Green and that kind of vibe. but by accident, it turns them into bread zombies. So now the bread zombies are walking around, like the one behind me, and it's the hungry living chasing them. So it's a reverse zombie apocalypse. And in the plot, you'll find out in the series that eventually, it's not a spoiler because it happens in the first episode, but we realize that a small portion of the population is immune to the bread. So the people who have gluten intolerance are naturally immune to it. And this is why in the beginning, when there's the chase, people don't really know if they're going to turn or not. So that's why they're motivated. And so in the story, in the first episode, the little sister, there's a sister and there's a little brother. The little brother ate some bread, turned into this cute little bread zombie, and the sister's just trying to have them escape from the city as the hungry mob is trying to find them, right? So it's sort of this paranoia comedy surrealism. And so they eventually escape the city, and we'll just find out in the end if the sister can escape hunger itself, right? So that's kind of some of the themes in the film. The strategy, I think what's more interesting for us, and I'm hoping to open it to this conversation, please, if you have any questions throughout. What I find interesting for us here is really talking more about the social strategy around that project. So it's sort of like an entertainment initiative to just initiate conversations through basic, basic storytelling. And while we do that, the distribution itself is this kind of hybrid with different things. So it starts off, the channel itself is sort of like a website type of environment where there's a window to this platform that's called the Jiffy. Jiffy is sort of like, you might know it's an index of GIFs. So the API of that platform is linked to all the social media, and it's sort of like secret media. It's like a secret media network in the sense that they pop up and they're appropriated by users when they write messages or communicate amongst them in other social media platforms. And this was sort of like a good way to create almost like street art, but in cyberspace, in the sense that you have these characters that can appear in day-to-day life and within the infrastructures of the interactions people are having. So this was a strategy to try to build three things. So the first thing was to be able to generate demand, in the sense for that series. When you socialize it with these tools, you are able to have a situation where people are expecting it or recognizing it instead of discovering it when they see it. And this helped create an interesting type of collaboration where a lot of artists participated in the world building. And we had live events. We did all kinds of cool things. So this is kind of a joke. I just thought it was funny. It ended up on the Elon Musk official Twitter page. The bread character ended up on that page right before Twitter changed to X, when we thought it was funny, so we recorded it. So just to give you an idea of how it was able to just socialize, these characters were basically creatively memed from the get-go as a creative as a storytelling strategy. The second, so that's the first thing this channel was for, generate demand. The second thing was for interesting partnerships. So with that kind of moat and that kind of ability to create stories and also oozify them, or sort of provide the social aspect of distributing it within the actual creative writing and within the content creation, that allowed for also opportunities when it came to partnering and in terms of social media partnerships. And, you know, for example, when I would be commissioned by UNESCO to make some animated equivalents of declarations, notably the rewired Declaration for Connectivity, the idea was to, while producing it, also be able to distribute it as portfolio material to link it to the original declarations. And this was an interesting experiment to find ways to build build not so much demand, but more build a feedback with the viewer in the service of a third link or a third organization that would have hopefully a strategy that is more in line with you know, sometimes bigger things than simply you know, like a commercial promotion. And the third thing that this did, this channel, it also created what I call creator R&D, so research and development in the field of animation in this very interesting time we live in. This this channel allowed for almost like a documentary approach to the process, a self-aware process of the creative act, and you know, really was a way to respond to this existential crisis that I feel, and I think a lot of artists feel when it comes to AI contexts. When you are feeling maybe that robots will replace what you do, I think that there's a way to co-evolve with it when you have access to cultural institutions that provide that safe environment for co-evolution, where you go from what used to be an you know, a deleveraged human by AI. You go from that scenario to a scenario where there's a co-evolution and a human to computer interaction in these contexts where the value is in the creative act and in the research and development through the creative act instead of the final product. When you're in the, there's many exceptions, of course. There's a lot of exemplary organizations that aren't cultural and are not public. It can be private as well. In essence, the model of selling the final product incentivizes sometimes to deleverage the middle parties. So if you have a new type of technology that fast tracks what used to be done by a human, and you're also incentivized to sell the final product, it would make, in line within that matrix of thought, it makes sense to replace humans with machines. But when you shift the value to the actual creative act by rewiring or sort of rethinking the model, that it suddenly makes reverses it. So suddenly the human presence is the value. And I was hoping to be able to provide through the Walking Bread sort of a guinea pig pipeline to show how these environments are possible. So I was helped a lot by the Film Board, the National Film Board. It's an 80-year-old institution, even more now. It's 85 years old, I think. And this is the old building. Now this is the new building, and this is a special photo that I was asked to make for the open house this year. So there's a giant bread on it because my film's about bread, and basically going back to the mindset of research and development, and the analogy of the snowball. The film itself was a way to socialize the process, and when we socialize the process, that means many things. So as you saw, it means generating demand. So when something is made, the quote-unquote consumer socialization happens at the consumer end. What's interesting is that in this case, and in that idea of spreading the creative act as the focus, the socialization also started prior. So you socialize the production as much as the consumption, right? So, and I think these binaries are obsolete, but I'm using them because we know exactly more or less what that implies. If you make a film, you want to market it, but this time around, and it's not unique. A lot of animation films are doing that. It's also doing a lot of social work on the production side. When this means partnering with interesting startups, different communities, beta software that you can creatively kit bash with your pipeline. And that stuff was very exciting. This led to it trickled down into a specific type of medium that I'm developing for this film. The medium is a medium that I kind of made up. I call it, genomic expressionism. So it's called genomic expressionism. I'm using these words poetically, but they also have direct echo in the actual way that you schematize images. It comes from the idea of the human genome of utterance of information. So thanks to a lot of emerging technologies, we have now almost like the reverse of data collection. It's the regurgitation of data. So you can, for example, prompt an apple, and you're going to tap into the collective subconscious of all the apples that have ever been documented, and it kind of manifests the genome of an apple. So it's genomic in that sense, but it's also expressionistic because it still caters to the urban planning of the cartoonist. So it's sort of meeting you halfway. It's both stretching and pulling information based on the animator or the creator that's a variable, because everybody has their own way of understanding space. And then it also injects it with production value. It injects it with the collective, the common denominator for specific topics. So it sounds very abstract. Specifically, this is a visual that shows that pipeline. So we start off with traditional animation, which is my case, but it could be different depending on the artist. Those are scenes from The Walking Dead. Then you go into just cleaning up and communicating to the computer with basic tones and values. Then you do depth-aware interpolation. So you start speculating scenes that never existed between the scenes, and then you get into prompt engineering. So this is where that idea of the genome comes in, because you're really targeting different things and developing data sets for these things, almost as if you're doing like the inside out of photography, right? And that was really exciting as a medium, because it's something that, at least for me, was new. It's not 3D. It's not traditional 2D. It's something new. I sometimes say that it's sort of like we're coming back to the era of like editing. Editing is back. The Eisensteinian times of focusing on the lens, on the viewer, is sort of back, because when you're in a place of abundance, like here, you're suddenly no longer forever. When you're an animator, forever you've been living in the world of scarcity. So you basically make you have one shot, then you make another one, and then you have to draw everything in between. So the question you ask yourself is how. You're always asking how. But now, thanks to things like this, you're in a situation where you're not scarcity, you're abundance. There's too much. So now you gotta take off. And now it's not so much how, it's why. Why am I doing this? What should I say instead of this? Because I can just generate it in 2 seconds. So it has changed the mind completely for a lot of animation. And suddenly you're focused on the viewer again, because you're focused on what they're going to see, what they're not going to see, and you're curating a subjective reality the way live action filmmakers have done for a long time. But animation has been a different process. And one analogy I bring up often is the difference between sculpting. To talk about that specific thing, the difference between sculpting with clay and the difference with sculpting with wood, right? So with wood, you cut pieces off. With clay, you add. So forever, it's been adding. You've been adding. Now you're in a situation where you have flattened all the potentials through the genome, and now you cut, you curate, and you do basically like an inside-out photography session the way your live action filmmaker does it. So another schema of this is here. Let's see if I can get to it. Okay, so this here is another version of the same thing you saw, but it explains it differently. So here you saw earlier, we start off with the drawings, right? This is human, this is human, this is human. This is very important because this is where you start communicating. So there's values, there's depth, and there's tones, there's hue. Now you start interpolating over here. Next, this is where it gets, this is the part where you're basically breaking down the scene. This is sort of like woodcuts. If you remember, woodcut artists like Hakusai would have the famous painting of the wave, the ocean wave, and you have basically every wood plate is a color, and in the same paper you affect it with different plates. In our case, it's sort of the same thing, but instead of it being a plate, a static woodcut plate, it's a timeline, right? So it's like 4D. It's a 4-dimensional plate. It's a sequence that repeats itself many times, and instead of it being a color, it's a prompt. It's a different it's different types of prompts, different types of targets, right? And these targets depend on the color we're looking at, it depends on the depth, and then they're layered one on top of the other, like the plates, like you're seeing here. And then you have something like that that's made in probably a tenth of what it would have cost, or in terms of time, a year ago. And it's sort of like you take the napkin sketch, you take the initial steps of a project, and you basically injected with the production value of stop motion. And of course, this is just a rough, then you can start color correcting, you can start drawing on top, you can build it, but you've got a place of texture, and it's sort of like 3D, but not necessarily. And it's focusing on the viewer's acceptance of what these things are. Like, for example, here I prompted wrinkled shirt, wrinkled skin, bread, right? So there's different things that we're looking for, and it's really focusing on what the consensus is for these elements. And that's cool because it's sort of like when you look at when you buy something from IKEA, and you get the book, and the book shows you how to build the chair. When you want to open the book to see how to build this chair, you don't need the illustrator to stylize the chair, because it's just going to confuse you. You want like the symbol of a chair, you want the genome of the chair, the archetype of a chair, so you can move on to something else. It's sort of like that as well. If you're trying to suspend disbelief and provide, just tell a story, what production value does to films, especially independent films and emerging films that aren't necessarily as represented as your main channels. What that does is that it sort of provides that chair to the story, in a sense that you can get to the story because visually you have leveraged what has been evaluated as the consensus on an element. And that's what I find very exciting about these new technologies, because they're really much focused on the sentient. They're focused on the pixel. They're surface based. They're not asset based like what we had in animation, especially 3D animation, for the last while. So that's that. This is a visual representation of some of the pipeline. So it's a variable pipeline. This is changing every day, but this is one version of that. Because again, we're focusing on the user. So we're focusing on the animation creator, and then the tools are variable, because that looseness, that value is in the value is in the looseness of these things, the volatility. There's a healthy volatility when things are not necessarily automated, but in fact you leave this margin of error, well, not margin of error, but this looseness between human and computer, so that a coevolution can happen. It's sort of like how the bicycle is like separate from the wheel by definition. It's kind of the same thing. We don't want to completely paraphrase every aspect of the creative act. We're trying to find these create environments where we can safely co-evolve with it. And that's why the focus is less on automating everything by basically replacing humans with protocols. It's more like finding tools that are sort of that have these moments in them of volatility that allow for rewiring and reconnections from the curatorial act of the user. And an element, and what's really interesting about that is that I just mentioned the medium and the way the medium works technologically, but the real part that I'm excited about recently, and it's a newer thing, is also about basically observing the creative act through the lens of cognitive science and through the lens of basically observation of that act, the act of creative problem solving and the act of animator types of empathy that they can feel with the viewer when they create their environments, including forms of temporality. So their understanding of how time works, which is also very different for each person, as well as schematizing space. So the way they abstract environments and sort of wrap you in this order. And I can get into details, but that's specifically this part over here. I'm basically creating logs of the behaviors during the use of these things, because this here is what I find extremely interesting when it comes to diversifying the output depending on depending on who you're speaking to. So how do you make this environment where you co-evolve with tech something that is not only protected but also sought after or desired because it has an industrial attraction to it. That's what that is, because suddenly you create an environment where you can learn from the process of filmmaking and also transcend it to hopefully different fields. We know a lot about bitmap generation now. We've applied it into a lot of tools that anybody can, like I can have it on my phone and basically do any image just by writing it. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg, right? You have robotics, you have all kinds of ergonomic realities, all kinds of sequences of thoughts and utterances, and what we call basically like these little modules of thought, and you try to break it down when it comes to, you can speak aloud while you're drawing. So when you're doing it, you have different motions, and every element is a thought, which is also the spoken. So all these things are these modular structures that connect and disconnect depending on the target or the problem that's being solved, the creative problem. And now, I mean, this specific thing here funnels into, it branches out into applicabilities that are now outside of animation and filmmaking. This is just this is more speculative, but I mean, I'm looking into how this could apply specifically to things that have to do with food. I think there's opportunities in AI enhanced predictive analytics for demand forecasting, right? So by interpreting cognitive data collected from artistic interactions, we can develop sophisticated predictive models that forecast consumer behavior and preferences with higher accuracy. And those are just examples, right? So robotic process optimization in food production. R-driven design of user interfaces for agricultural drones could be interesting. Just brainstorming, very speculative, but there's things that temporality does that definitely has applicability. And I think cognitive inspired machine learning for food quality control is also an interesting one. And I think there's enhanced food distribution logistics through AI. I found interesting. And so I'm really going through, this is more or less the mindset, but I hope we can maybe open it to a more a discussion. Hopefully I can orient, offer extra details on anything you found interesting.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex. Any questions? My question here is, Alex, how difficult or intuitive, how easy or difficult is for you, for example, to use AI?
Yeah, so it's sort of, you can have it on your phone and work with it, or you can use beta software or things that are much more in the code. I personally like using Python, as well as mostly on the Google Colab interface. It allows for a lot of tests and experiments, and basically it's not necessarily that hard. It's about being surrounded with people who hopefully are. I try to be surrounded by people who are brilliant and help with different things. So if there's something we need creatively you want to do, you just kind of define what that is, and hopefully you can learn from trial and error, but you can also ask people who are way smarter, and I mean, that's what I've been doing as well. I mean, I have a lot of friends in these fields, and they've been really guiding me throughout this whole process. So this is sort of like the culmination of trial and error with a lot of conversations and troubleshooting and stuff like that. But I mean, specifically, what's interesting with these mediums is the opportunities of again learning from what you're doing, and again the sort of transferring knowledge or transfer learning, right, from one thing to the other. And when you want to develop a film, you are doing that, right? But what's fascinating is just losing that element. Forget about the film, think about how can this help in other fields, and suddenly you answer the previous concern, which was to have an environment that fosters coevolution instead of encouraging deleveraging human factors into pipelines. And that's the part that, I mean, that part is really what's exciting. It's that, to me, it's the part of how do you develop these communities where suddenly what used to be sort of just like an artist led narrative, or an artist-led criticism of technology, which in many cases is valid. It goes from that to actually an environment where everyone is excited about keeping the human in that environment. And that happens with sort of bridging it out of the silo of film into environments that are more about maybe solving issues that are very complex and have a lot of temporality in it, and a lot of so that's another thing. I mean, I don't know how well I honored your question, but another thing that's kind of interesting with all this is how the database has kind of flattened time for a long time. For the last, in most of my life, right, for the last 15 years, what it did is that you can basically Wikipedia something outside of its context. So the links between what triggered the presence of an element have been diluted by a database where every module is associated to the next one. So a certain cartoon character is connected to anything else in this kind of flat environment where you can look for them individually, and you can just look up anything in this database. Now there's a situation now where after flattening that time into a null environment where everything is all at once, there's sort of like this reclaiming of time. There's a reclaiming of temporality, a reclaiming of sequence, reclaiming of human scale, human temper, human relationship to that database. And that, I think we're kind of at a place now. It's sort of a less competent way of saying that we moved from the information to knowledge, right? We moved from this era of information to this era of knowledge, where it's more about the temporal links between things that are sort of intertwined, and that here is something that I maybe I'm optimistic, but I feel like this is something that cannot be replaced because it's very it's very context sensitive. So when you sync yourself to a user for a long period of time, then maybe you can have patterns, but these patterns are variable, and there's a gold mine of behaviors that we can learn from to optimize our supply chains, and that I think that would lead to hopefully some positive impact on the food on the food front as well.
Thank you. Any other question? Well, so thank you very much. We are a little bit far with the time. Just to tell you thank you, and to tell you that here we have 10 artists that are working hardly on art, food, and technology. So you are invited in April to Barcelona to see these great works, and hope to meet you in person there.
April, perfect. Which date in April?
It's 20 days, so we will send
Nice.
the information exactly.
Yeah. Well, Petya, I wanted to congratulate you for this initiative, and again, it's been a pleasure. We met earlier this year, but it's been a very nice creative partnership. I hope it keeps going, and congratulations to all the artists, and I'm looking forward to seeing the art ASAP.
Good. Thank you very much.
See ya.
May I ask you a question related to that? Are the dates already known when the exhibition is? And where?